Okay, so let's dive in. Picture this with me, if you will. It's Friday morning, June 6, 2025, early, and federal agents are spreading out across Los Angeles.
Yeah, all over.
They're raiding businesses, places you'd recognize like down in the fashion district, even stores like Home Depot. Big names.
And our sources make it clear this wasn't, random. It was coordinated, part of a big nationwide deportation push.
Right.
And the key thing right away is how this clashes, really clashes, with LA's whole identity as a sanctuary city.
Exactly, a
Okay.
sanctuary city. And just so we're all on the same page, for you listening, that basically means LA has policies trying to limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, like ICE.
Correct.
So you have federal agents coming in quite visibly into a city that specifically said, we don't really participate in this. The tension is, well, it's baked in from the start.
Totally. And you saw that reflected immediately in the state leadership's reaction.
Sure.
Governor Newsom, the sources quote him pretty directly. He didn't hold back.
What did he say?
Called the federal actions purposefully inflammatory and warned they'd only escalate tensions. Strong words.
Purposefully inflammatory. Wow. That tells you a lot about the immediate pushback, doesn't it?
It really does.
So, okay, our mission here in this deep dive is to take these sources you've gathered, really unpack what went down that weekend in LA, the raids, the reactions, the immediate fallout. We want to give you a clear picture, pull out the key pieces from this very complex situation.
Right. Let's zero in on that initial spark then. Friday, June 6th. Those raids, the detentions.
Yeah.
Sources said at least 44 people were detained initially. And the locations, again, Fashion District, Home Depot, very public, very visible places, lots of people around.
And dropping that kind of federal operation into LA, given its sanctuary status we just talked about,
Yeah.
well, it was pretty much guaranteed to cause an uproar, wasn't it?
Absolutely. You see Newsom calling it inflammatory, and that feeling clearly spread fast on the ground.
So it moves beyond just words pretty quickly.
It did. By Friday evening, June 6th, we weren't just talking uproar anymore. We were seeing actual clashes breaking out in some spots.
Clashes where?
The sources specifically name Paramount and Compton.
Okay, Paramount and Compton. What did the reports say those clashes looked like? What was happening?
Pretty intense descriptions from those areas. Talk of authorities using tear gas flashbangs.
Wow.
And, really disturbingly reports of cars being set on fire. So it paints a picture of significant confrontation, definitely, in those specific spots outside the main city center.
Okay. Tear gas, flashbangs, cars ablaze. Quite a scene. But the sources also mention things happening downtown, right? In LA proper.
Yes, downtown LA saw protests too. There's a local reporter description quoted, something like, helmeted police in riot gear faced off against protesters.
It's tense.
And the actions downtown, they were also pretty direct, according to the reports. Demonstrators turning over a shopping cart, blocking streets. And yeah, another car reportedly set ablaze there too.
So fires in multiple locations then.
Seems so. And the chant reported, I see out of LA. Leaves little doubt about the focus of the anger.
Okay, but here's where it gets interesting, or maybe complicated. You mentioned reports of clashes, fires, tear gas, and Paramount and Compton.
Right.
But then there's an official LAPD statement in the sources that seems to paint a different picture, at least within the city limits.
Exactly. This is a key distinction the sources highlight. The LAPD statement said that protests within city limits remain peaceful.
Peaceful. That contrasts pretty sharply with reports from Paramount and Compton, and even the mention of a car ablaze downtown.
It really does. It kind of highlights the challenge maybe of getting a single clear narrative when things are happening fast across different areas, different jurisdictions even. The official city police line was peaceful, but other reports, just nearby, described significant conflict.
Interesting discrepancy. So that's Friday evening. Tensions high, differing accounts. What happens as we roll into Saturday, June 7th?
Saturday is when the federal response ramps up significantly. President Trump authorizes the deployment of National Guard troops.
How many?
2,000. 2,000 troops heading to Los Angeles.
2,000. That's a substantial number. And Reuters apparently noted this was happening while federal agents were facing off against what they called a few hundred demonstrators.
Yeah, that detail from Reuters is worth noting, the scale of the troop deployment compared to the reported size of the protests at that moment on Saturday.
Right.
We also have an NBC image description mentioned in the sources from Saturday, noting Border Patrol agents using tear gas during a demonstration that day as well.
So more tear gas on Saturday. This really crystallizes that federal versus state standoff you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
D.C. and California seem to be on a collision course.
Absolutely. And you see the justifications diverging sharply. The feds, specifically White House border czar Tom Homan, are quoted framing it as making LA safer.
How did he put it?
He said they are making Los Angeles safer and bringing the National Guard in tonight.
Mm.
So the federal narrative is about safety, order.
But Governor Newsom, not buying it.
Not at all. He doubled down, again calling the federal action purposefully inflammatory. And he went further, calling for the state to take over deployment.
Take over deployment, so challenging federal control on the ground.
Essentially, yeah, a
Uh-huh.
direct challenge to federal authority to manage the situation in California.
Meanwhile, you have the mayor of L.A., Karen Bass, dealing with this on the ground. What was her perspective, according to the sources?
Mayor Bass is quoted calling it a difficult time. Her focus seems more localized, condemning the violence, stating that violence and destruction are unacceptable, sort of trying to manage the immediate impact within the city.
Okay, so state and federal governments are clashing. The mayor is focused on the local situation. What did things look like by Sunday, June 8th? Had things calmed down?
The sources suggest, yes, somewhat. The phrase used is the dust has settled a bit by Sunday. The National Guard was still there, their presence remained, but the demonstrations by Sunday were being described as mostly peaceful, a noticeable shift from Friday night and Saturday.
Mostly peaceful. And were there any overall numbers released about the impact of the whole weekend? Arrests, injuries?
Yes. By Sunday, the Department of Homeland Security provided some figures for the countywide impact. They reported 118 arrests.
118.
And sadly, also 4 security officers injured during the events.
4 officers injured. Okay. So looking beyond that immediate weekend, what do the sources suggest might come next? This doesn't feel like a closed chapter.
No, definitely not. The sources point towards potential legal fights, big ones, about whether deploying federal agents and the Guard this way, especially in Sanctuary City, was, legal and appropriate.
Right. Questions about precedent, federal versus state power.
Exactly. And then there's the ongoing human story, right? The impact on the immigrant families caught up in the raids, the detentions, that continues. This whole weekend really just threw that fundamental tension, federal immigration goals versus sanctuary policies, into incredibly sharp focus. It's not resolved.
It really isn't. You step back and look at everything we've just pulled from the sources. The initial federal sweep, the immediate strong state reaction, those different accounts of the protests, peaceful here, clashes there, the debate over whether it was necessary intervention or deliberate provocation.
Yeah, and how everyone involved, local, state, federal officials, framed it completely differently.
It really hammers home a crucial point, doesn't it? How the same events unfolding on the ground can look and be presented so incredibly differently depending on who's telling the story and what their perspective is.
Absolutely. It's a powerful reminder about critically evaluating information and considering the source.
Definitely something for you to think about as you process all this. This deep dive certainly painted a picture of a very, very intense few days in Los Angeles.
A lot packed into one weekend, for sure. And like you said, not the end of the story.
Not at all. So please join us next time. We're going to continue digging into this, specifically unpacking some of that legal precedent around these kinds of deployments we just touched upon.
And the sources also mentioned potentially hearing from some of those detained from inside immigration courts. So we'll be looking to explore those accounts, too, to understand their direct experiences.
Exactly. We'll see you then for the next deep dive.